Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Kalayim, Perek Ches, Halacha Dalid, and God willing, beginning the final Perek of the Masechta, Perek Tes, Halacha Aleph. We're learning today Daf Ayin Hey, and let's go right away into our intro. So the last suffix, perhaps question that the Gemara brought up, let's word it in a way of a question, that how can you tell me that there are six fakes, three of which Beis Shammai has the suffix, and the other three, Beis Hillel joins Beis Shammai in the suffix, when really there is the seventh suffix, which is the Amma Tiriksin. As we learned in the Gemara, good to know that the word Tiriksin is a composite of two words in Greek. Tirik means inside, sun means outside. Tirikson means there is a doubt whether the space upon which the wall that had the thickness of an Amma, Bisman Bayis Rishon, is that space part of the Kodesh, or is it part of the Kodesh Kachim? Just as an example, if the Kohen stood there during the Second Temple era, when there wasn't a wall on that space, there were curtains, so one can actually be on that Amma. Let's say the Kohen would do the Avodah from there, an Avodah that has to be done Lifnai v'Lifnim. Was he in the Holy of Holies, or was the Kohen in the wrong location, the Kohen Gadol? And the Gemara is going to begin today by suggesting that why is there a doubt? Why can this not be resolved from Psukim? And the Gemara is going to show you that you have a pasuk that implies one, and you have another pasuk, a pasuk in Malachim, you have a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, and each pasuk implies the opposite opinion, and therefore they remained with a doubt. Now, the Gemara is going to go back, before we conclude this Perek, back to the machlokes we had in the Mishnah regarding the Shor Habor. Hanakama holds min behema, Rabbi Yossi holds min chaya. Obviously, whether it's min behema or min chaya, the nafkaminas would be, if shor habor is min chaya, then a shor habor with a shor would be kalayim, because a shor is a behema. In addition to what we said, we read that Asherilio, if I sell to you my animals, and instead of me specifying what exactly am I saying, what am I selling, I tell you that I am selling to you all of my behemoths. And I also owned shor haboris. So if it's a chaya, it's not included in the sale. If it's a behemoth, it is included in the sale. And the Gemara finally is going to bring forth a similar question that we already mentioned yesterday or 2 days ago, but now I looked it up. In Bavli, Bava Kama, Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, the Gemara over there wants to know whether you can harness, whether it is a boat or whether it is a plow, to an Iza and a Shibuta. An Iza is a goat, and a Shibuta is a certain sea creature. And is there the issue, let's say, of being manig with two different species? This will be a question similar to that will be asked over here, even though we're going to give different creatures. And what will be unique is that in the Yerushalmi, the Gemara is going to come with an answer. I looked up yesterday in the Babli, the Gemara doesn't have an answer. Here we're going to have a unique answer to this question, and that will be more or less the end of Perek Shmini. Perek Chi, the final chapter of this Masechta, will open up with the topic of Kilei Begadim. I think Kilei Begadim for city people like us might be the most applicable. First of all, even biblically, it's Bein Ba'aretz, Bein B'chutz La'aretz. Unlike the topics that we had both of Kilei Zeroim and Kilei Kalayim, or Kilei Akedem. In addition to that, it's just more practical. It's something that we have to be more aware of. Now we have, I'll say right now, two psukim in the Torah regarding Kilei Begadim. One is a pasuk in Kedoshim, the same pasuk that mentions Kalayim of a behema and Kalayim of the field of Kilei Zeroyim. Right, we keep on quoting that pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim. That's Vayikra Yutes es Chukoisai Tishmoiru. So all of these are in the category of a chayk. That's important. So even though, we did mention certain Rishonim that they give a certain insight into it, but ultimately it's a real chayk. And the Torah mentions the three: Behem Techoloi Sabia Kalayim, Sot Choloi Sizra Kalayim, and Ubeged Kalayim that the Torah calls Shatneis Lo Yalu Alech. Then we have another pasuk in Kiseitze. The pasuk in Kiseitze reads Lo Silba Shatneis Semeru Pishtam Yachtov. So first of all, we have a clarification that Shatneis is a composite only of Tzemer or Pishtim. We're going to have to clarify, why is it that the Torah uses in Kiseitse the word silbash, don't garb yourself. And in Parshas Kedoshim, the Torah says, don't even put it on you. We're going to learn today what that is including. It's beyond only garbing. We'll see what that includes and what does that not include. Actually, the Mishnah will begin by mentioning 3 laws in the Torah connected exclusively to Tzemer Upishtim. One is the din, as we're learning over here, of Shatnes. The other will be the din of Nigei Bigadim. So this unique halacha of Nigei Bigadim is only on a beged of Tzemer or Pishtim. Really, it's even on threads of either Tzemer or Pishtim, but only to these 2 types, to the exclusion of all the other types. Actually, when it comes to Nigei, to Negoyim, it's not only Tzemer or Pishtim, but it's only if the color of these fibers are in their natural state, which is white. Mashe Enkein, when it comes to Shatnes of Bigadim, even if you dye the wool and the linen to any color, the prohibition remains the same. And the third halacha of the Mishnah will be dafka in the positive, that a kohen, we'll speak out whether it's the kohen hedyot, certainly the kohen gadol, they actually wore Tzemer Upishtim. These will be the 3 halachas regarding Tzemer Upishtim. We're going to have in the Gemara some halachas of Bittul, which will be fascinating regarding Shatnes. And again, as we spoke out, we're going to have an elaborate brisa that's going to expound the meaning of Lo Yale Olecha. What does that include beyond the Lo Silbash and much, much more? Without any further ado, Chavra, let's go. Daf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph Mamish all the way on the top. Let's approach the sugya that the Gemara said that there are 6 fakers. And now let's go with that Zakasha. Frag the Gemara and Daf Ayin Dalad Amud Beis. Why 6? Why 6? There are 7. We have a suffix, and Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, they all. The word Trixin means doubt. We don't know whether it's part of the outside, whether it's part of the inside. So it's a doubt. So the Gemara challenges Amar Rabbi Yosi. Hold on, why is it a doubt? Let's resolve it. From where? From a pasuk. Min madechsiv. Why don't we look at that which it says? And he's quoting a pasuk in Malachim, and the pasuk is describing the dimensions of the kodesh, which otherwise known as the heichel, the sanctuary. And what's the length? The width is 20 amas, that we know. But what's the length? Va'arboyim ba'ama hoya habayis hu ha'heichel ofanoi. That the length of the heichel is 40 amas. If the amma teriksin would be part of the kodesh, then the heichel would have 41 amas. Exactly. So Hada Amra, does that pasuk not imply that the amma teriksin was not part of the heichel? Because we can account for all of the 40 amas that is in the heichel proper. We're speaking not about the width. I said the width is 20 amas, but the length. So is that ayah that the area, the space upon which the wall used to stand, Bisman Bayis Rishon, that was now the space of the double curtains in which you can walk in between them, that's mibifnim. Mibifnim means lefnai velefnim. That's l'chayra raya. So Amar Lei Rav Mana, no, the reason why the question is not resolved from a pasuk in Malachim, you're right. From the pasuk in Malachim, that's the correct implication. But I have another pasuk, and the pasuk isn't Divrei Hayamim. V'aksiv, because it says Vayas es beis kodesh hakachim. And when we are describing the dimensions of the Holy of Holies, it says Esrim Ama Oirech ve'Esrim Ama Roichav. It was exactly a square. Again, where the focus is not on the width. The width is equal to Kodesh and the Kodesh Kachim. The inner space inside both is 20 amas, meaning the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kachim. But when it comes to the length, it's 20 amas. And again, the 20 amas are accounted for. So now the Amma Teriksin L'choyre is outside of the 20 amas. And that's why we have a doubt. In other words, when you look inside the psukim, you have to know all the psukim. And if one implies one and the other implies the other, so we don't know what's the correct limit. And therefore, indeed, it is a suffix. So you can say, like, why are we saying that there are 6 fakers? Why don't we say there are 7 fakers? If we're going to word it that way, which taka would imply that these are the only doubts we have throughout. Or Rami Bar Ukva is just saying that, okay, I have another doubt. Either way. But this doubt is unresolved. Now we're going back to the Mishnah. Guys, I really hope that the connection is good. Says the Holy Mishnah, Shor Bar So we had a machlokes between Tanakama, and we're going to say Tanakama is not just one opinion, but the Gemara calls it Chachamim, the majority opinion. The Chachamim hold that the wild ox is a min behema. However, Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's a min chaya. So says the Gemara, Rabban and Amrin, what's underlying the argument? This is fascinating. The Chachamim that say min behema, they hold that mikah have that all of the ox began domesticated. When Hashem created oxen, he created one type, ashar. What happened is that at some point, some of them ran away from where people live. Ba'arak. I know that Arak, Le'ilu Nishmas, today is the big Hilula of Rabbi Yitzchak. Right? But the Arak means Antlafim. They ran away over there. In other words, they became wild, not in their nature. Their nature was to be domesticated. Because of their surroundings, they became wild. And therefore, when you look at an animal, don't look at the animal's current state. It's like when you look at your child, lahavdil. If the child is wild, that's because he's in a bad environment. It's not because he's ba'atzim wild. Oh, Yakir has what to say now. Not because his kids are wild, God forbid, but he has a comment over here.
No, isn't a cow? Isn't a cow is also behema? The one that's not running away?
So a cow and an ox is male and female. There are three types of behemoths in the Torah, right? We learned this. What are the three types of behemoths? Oxen, which includes cows, sheep, and goats. They are all min behema. These are the only three min behemoths.
Right, but we're
that
saying
are kosher, that are kosher. And halama, there's a certain subspecies in the shard that's called the wild shard. What are you asking? Are you asking, is there a wild cow? Could be. But it's called B'Shem Sharabar. Okay. So, however, Rabbi Yossi holds, in other words, they go back to the beginning, that Ikare min Tamon Hava. No. They originated from outside the cities. When God created oxen, some of them were created lachatchila with a different teva. In other words, everyone holds it's about how did this begin? How did this thing begin? If it began from the beginning of time, that certain oxen were created to be domesticated, and God Almighty created other oxen to live out there in the wild. That's called the wild. That's a min chaya. That means even if a person were to domesticate the wild ox, bepnimius, it's a vilda chaya. Al derech we have, if you remember, in the first mission on Sanhedrin, if I'm not mistaken, when we spoke about certain animals that even if you domesticated them, what are the animals? The nachash, the leopard. Yakir, there's a third one, if I remember correctly. You know what I'm talking about? No? Okay, weiter. Says the Gemara, that Tony we learned in a Braisa, Shoid im Sharbar. So let's go. Lamain afkemina, whether it's a min chayim min behema. So this Braisa holds like the Tanakama, that what? That a shar habar, even though currently it's living in the wild, and it's wild, it has wild characteristics. It's not domesticated. But if you were to pull a plow with both of these oxen, einam kalayim. Braisa, there's no two opinions, says the Gemara. Indeed, the look at Rabbi Yossi, because according to Rabbi Yossi, it would be kalayim. That would be an afkamin. Now the Gemara says like this: we have in Parshas Re'eh, when the Torah speaks about the kosher min behema, then the Torah speaks about the kosher min chaya. The Torah enumerates 7 animals that are all chayas. And let me just read that pasuk: ayil utzvi v'yachmoir va'akoi v'dishoin usooi v'zomer. We're going to focus on the second to last. Zomed is a giraffe, l'chura. Usooi, what is this sooi? So says the Gemara like this, that v'ilein de metargemin, those who translate the end of the pasuk, that the word usooi for them is v'toirei bar. Toirei bar means a shor habar, virei manim. Those who have that targum, they hold like Rabbi Yossi. Let me say like this. We currently have the most important Targum that we have is Targum Onkelos. But we already know, I think from Megillah, that there were other Targums. You have Targum Yonasan ben Uziel that was written on parts of Tanakh. You have Targum Yerushalmi. There are other Targums. Now, these Targums weren't just a Targum you had in your Chumash. The way Torah used to be read, the way we do now, Shnai Mikra ve'Echad Targum, is that pasuk. Someone would read the Torah, and here in the Yemenite Shul on Pico, that's how they do it. And then someone says a Targum. So there were different Targums. Now, Targum Yerushalmi is not like Targum Onkelos. In Targum Onkelos, he doesn't interpret the words Uso'oir v'toirei bar. He does not say that. But in Targum Yerushalmi, that's exactly what they say. V'toirei bar. Now, toirei bar is Shad Habar. Shad Habar is in the pasuk that speaks about Chayas. So those who have this Targum was made way before the times of the Tanoim. Okay? Or not. But l'chayra there was way before the times of the Tanoim. So v'toirei bar v'reimanim is like a Rabbi Yosef. Okay. Says the Gemara. We already spoke about it. Like who was the first one to translate the Torah? That we know from Moshe Rabbeinu did it, right? Ba'er heite, but we don't have that translation. Who was the next one to translate the Torah? That's the question. We definitely had the terrible story that should have been a fast day when that's Bisman Bayesheni, when they forced 70 Chachamim or 72 Chachamim to translate the Torah B'Lashon Yavani. And that was a day kosher, like the day that the luchas were broken. But that was against our desire. Yonasan ben Uziel was given permission. Yonasan ben Uziel was a Talmud of Hillel, right? I'm a held cup over here. Right, from the great, or from the smallest
the
Talmud.
Greatest one of Hillel.
Okay, so it was in the time of the Tanoim. Now, with Targum Yerushalmi, was it before or after? But these Targums were done by the Shus, the Oibishtet. Okay.
Was he allowed to translate it?
Because anything that's not part of Scripture used to dafka be called Torah Shebal Peh. When I say translated, very good, Kevin. I'm sorry, I'm happy you said that. I don't mean people that had their own translation. A written translation. In other words, what Yonasan ben Uziel did was he wrote down a translation. And translating the written Torah was part of the prohibition of Devarim Shebal Peh. You cannot let him write down Torah Shebal Peh. But there were certain exceptions. Until came Rabbeinu HaKadosh, as we know, Eis Las Lashem. And he pushed it and he wrote down, and then in his time they wrote down the Mishnah, and then they wrote down all of the Braises, including the Braisa of Rab Shimon, which is the Zoyar. Okay, says the Gemara. Now we're going to the final topic. That not yet. Rabbi Ba b'shem Shmuel Avos, a domesticated goose, im Avos midbar, with a wild goose. It is kalayim zebozeh. It is kalayim. Now, first of all, we have in Bava Kama, like I mentioned, on Daf Nun Hey, the Rashi Ilya brings it in the middle of the right column, that it's very easy to identify. How do you identify a wild ox with a non-wild ox? I don't know. But the Chazal tell us that the domesticated goose, baits of mibafnim, their testicles, their male organs are inside. And v'zeh, wild geese or goose is baits of mibachutz. So they have a whole different. In other words, you can identify them. Perhaps because of them being begashmi is different. That for sure they're considered two different species. There isn't any opinion that says it's the same, and therefore it's kalayim one and the other. If you were to make them work together. Now comes the question: when it comes to an avos, a domesticated goose, im avos hayam, with a sea goose is a whole different type of creature. It cannot live outside the water. It's a type of fish. Maybe Kevin will find on Google exactly what that is. What the name is not important. The sea goose is not a bird at all. It's a creature that has to live under the water. Now, like I mentioned, that in Bava Kama on Daf Nun Hey, the same question was not asked concerning Avos, im Avos Hayam, but the Gemara brings over there that Boy Rechava, that the Na'amay Rechava asked, what happens? Hamanik Be'iza Vishibuta. Shibuta is that type of fish that would live in these shallow little rivers, and you can attach it to a plow, right? So the Gemara already said that if you can attach a boat to two different fish, for sure, yes, kalayim. But the Gemara is, I'm quoting the words in the Gemara Bavli Bava Kama Daf Nun Hey Yomad Aleph. The words are mi amrinon kivan, that the Iza loinachis bayam vishibuta loisalik leyabasha, they're so dissimilar, land, sea, that they're never joined together. Even if you harness them together, they're not joined. Or adarabba, since they're so dissimilar, it's a problem. Here the Gemara has an answer. What's the Gemara's answer? Tane Rabbi Yuda ben Pazi, from the place L'chayda of the Bar Doloya, L'chayda, that's the name of a location. that Vilayodin Montana, even though he quoted the Braisa, we never discovered who's the author. Maybe that's why in the Bavli they didn't quote this. They weren't sure. They weren't sure maybe whether it was authentic or not. But what's the Braisa that we quote in the Yerushalmi that we know the answer from a Kal V'chomer? What's the Kal V'chomer? Ma im b'shoshe shneiim bayabasha. If even two creatures are land creatures, at Amar Asur b'shoshe echad bayabasha ve'echad bayam. So they are actually more dissimilar for sure. Like Kolchrein, that it should be more awesome. The logic is not that if it's so dissimilar, they're never joined at all. No, you're joining them by harnessing something together, or you're mating them, whichever way. Let's go with the harnessing, with Hamanik. And the bottom line is that gets prohibited. And now the final din of the Mishnah was that that a person is permitted with any creature, whether it is to plow, whether it is to pull, not God forbid to breed, but to work together. How do you know that? Maybe it's also asa. And we're speaking about, we just established that when the most dissimilar should be more prohibited. We're the most dissimilar. Adam Adam we
can adapt. Humans adapt. Humans can adapt.
Okay, so he says like this. It has to be based on the pasuk. See if it says. And that's the pasuk that we keep on quoting. Okay, that's there's two psukim by Kila Behema, just to make it clear. One we just quoted in the intro by Kedoshim, where the pasuk says Behem Techol Lo Yisarbia Kalayim. We're speaking not about mating, we're speaking about pulling, plowing. So here, since the Torah says Leisachresh B'Shor B'Chamor Yachtov, and let me just say the words of the Rashirilio on the bottom of the right column, that the Torah could have written that Loi Yacharoishu Shor V'Chamor, Loi Yacharoishu Shor V'Chamor, Loi Sachroish is you. You should not plow with an ox and a donkey. So the pasuk is speaking about a person that's working with an animal. If there would be which by the way, that's the way it normally used to be. Now I know today you have everything can be automated, but the way it worked then is when you plow with an ox, you can't just attach it to an ox and let the plow go. You have to have a person there controlling the animal, directing the animal. If the Torah would have said that there's a prohibition of having an ox and a donkey plow together without mentioning you, then maybe even a person cannot join an animal. But since the Torah says you cannot plow with an ox and a donkey, is a raya that you could plow only with an ox. You are allowed to plow only with a donkey. The you is only problematic when there's a shoyd and a chamoid. Gavaldik, that's a good raya. B'shoyd u'b'chamoid ein at chodesh. The Torah is speaking about what you may not do. And you cannot do it with both of them, which means with one of the two you could. Abel chodesh at b'shoyd adam or b'chamoid adam. And now that we say, so I just want to say like this, we're going to come back to Kili Akerem, but before we come back to Kili Akerem, maybe, Kavan, maybe, now that the Gemara established that two items that are very dissimilar, which is a creature of the sea and the creature of land, are included in the Isur of Kalayim, maybe we put a limit to it. That if they are mamish minakotze elakotze, if they are completely dissimilar, even more dissimilar, then there's no issue. In other words, I'm saying that maybe Adam is considered so dissimilar that there's not a problem. Because the Torah doesn't want you to join. And to join, there has to be some point of connection. Or the way you said, Kavan, that a man, because of the seichel that God gave us, is able to mamish become like a shoyd and like a chamoid. So if the logic would be, this is just an insight, that it's tar balchayim to put two creatures that are so dissimilar, a man knows how not to make it a tzar balchayim. That's because of the seichel that we have. We know how to be zich meshadach with anyone.
All right, how could a human match the strength of an ox when pulling
a human
a
cannot
carriage?
match. So this is a big theme that we have in Chassidus, that a human being represents Kedusha. Kedusha is the power of Kedusha is balance. Balance means, I want to say it like this, Kevin, that an ox, the koyach of an ox is needed to plow because a human being doesn't come near the power of an animal. What's the weakness of an animal? That the animal only has koyach. But what about other attributes? So let's say you have a tiger. How quick can a tiger run? How strong is a lion? But if a lion is on the road and a car is coming 100 miles an hour into the lion, sometimes it won't have enough seichel to get out of the way. We are the king over the universe is not because that we have in one area more advantage over the other, but because we have a ability in all of the areas and we know how to balance it out. The koyach of man is the ultimate tikkun. Tikkun means balance. And animals are toyu. Toyu means that they're one-sided, but that one side is a much stronger than man. And now we are starting with Hashem's help, the final chapter, Perek Shi. It's amazing. Look at the words. I don't know all of the names of the parakim of the whole Shas in my mind, but it's the name of the Perek is Einoi Asur. How beautiful is that? Not Asur, Einoi Asur. We already spoke out.
Eino behei or eino be'alef? I'm sorry for those of us that
Aleph,
don't have
Yud, Nun, Vav. In other words, the Mishnah says, I'm going to right away read the words that we said the intro before. Einoi asur mishum kalayim elot semeru pishtim. Instead of writing semeru pishtim, it's einoi ella is to the exclusion of all other. And I want to add a detail that even when we speak about wool, wool only means the wool of sheep. Whether it's young, whether it's old, right? Whether it's a keves, whether it's an ayol, whether it's male, whether it's only sheep. There is no other wool that's problematic, no other wool when it comes to shatnez. So it's very limited. And the same thing with linen. As we'll see today in the Gemara, there are many other plants that are very similar to linen. But einoi asur ella, wool of sheep and pishtim linen. I want to say another detail about pishtim. That when is pishtim a problem when it comes to kilei bigadim? Only if it is a thread. Only when it's already a thread. Prior to it being a thread, that means when it's in its natural state, there is no issue with, it's not called pishtim. It's going to be called bad. Okay, we'll get to that more as we open up this Perek. So now that we mentioned that there is a unique prohibition, not kilei bigadim, you can't put together any two materials. Like we have by kilei behema means any two different animals cannot be joined together. Not to be marbia and not in being manik. When it comes to shatnez, it's only tzemer pishtim. Now the Mishnah will tell us another two, it means the total will be three, halachis in the Torah that speak about garments, but it's only tzemer pishtim. Rule number 2 is, ve'einoi metama b'negoyim elot tzemer pishtim. There's a caveat, like I mentioned before, that when it comes to shatnez, bigadim, kilei bigadim, makes no difference to what is the color of the wool, makes no difference to what the color now is the pishtim. If it was dyed or left natural into any color, it's equally prohibited. But when it comes to the dinim of nigei bigadim, not only is it semeru pishtim, but it's only when they're white. And I want to just say the following, just to make a correction, that when we learned 2 days ago, Adne Hasadne, 3 days ago, and I mentioned that the only, where do we find tumas oil only by corpse tuma? That's wrong. That's a mistake. Nigei big godim is also matama ba'oil. Remember that from the Rama and from it's psukim in the Torah. It's a very strong tuma. Whenever it's matame, anything in the home will become tame together with the beged, because the beged is going to impart tuma also through oil. But anyways, that detail is not negea. What's negea here is temeru pishtim. And now this is a bomb line. And I'll tell you why there's a big chiddush here. Then the Mishnah says that ein hakoyhanim loifshim l'shamish b'mikdash, that the type of garments. Now the type, we're not speaking about the ksoinis mikbas and the mechnasayim and avnei. The Mishnah is not speaking about the 4 types that the kohen hedit wears or the me'il choshen ephod and sits. We're not speaking about the type. We're speaking about from what is it made from. What fibers kahuna? So says the Mishnah, ein hakoyhanim loifshim l'shamish b'mikdash elot semeru pishtim. Elot semeru pishtim. Now here there's a problem. Let me tell you what the problem is. Or araya. We have a machloikis that we learned in Yuma regarding what is the avnate of a kohen hedyet made from. Vadai, the kohen hedyet, whether it is the ksoinis, the tunic, whether it is the mikbaz, the hat, or the turban, or the fedora, however, but it's made out of that. It's made all out of linen. The michnosayim, the Hasidic gatkes, breeches, all right, the short pants, and that for sure is made out of linen by the Kohen Hedyot and by the Kohen Gadol. These three types. When it comes to the Kohen Gadol's choshen and ephod, the me'il of the Kohen Gadol, we learned this, is made out of wool only. The tzitz is made out of gold only. But the choshen and the ephod both have shatnez. They don't only have shatnez; they also have gold. The avnate of the Kohen Gadol also for sure has shatnez, wool and linen. The avnate of the Kohen Hedyot are machloikas. Some hold that the Kohen Hedyot's avnate was only made out of linen. Who wore shatnez in the Beis Hamikdash? Only the Kohen Gadol. Now, let me say like this: when the Mishnah says "Eina kohanim loivshim l'shamish b'mikdash kohanim semer upishtim," if we are speaking about the Kohen Gadol, then it's not accurate, because there is also golden threads. You also have a mineral. You have a diamond. You have a gold. So the answer would be, the Mishnah is not speaking about the Kohen Gadol, Chad B'dar. We're speaking about Kohanim. But the Kohanim didn't wear Tzemer Upishtim, unless you hold that even the avnate of the Kohen Hedyot had in it Tzemer Upishtim. In other words, there's a raya from our Mishnah only to one side of this argument. And it can't be, because no one is going to argue with the Mishnah. And how can there be another?
I think Rambam holds that.
That's right. That's correct. Okay, let's go weiter. Now we're coming back. Let's go. Semer Gemalim. What about camel's hair? Right, you would say it's wool. Turning to Daf Ayin Hey Omid Beis, or it's late. And you take the wool, what are you laughing? You take the wool of camels, and you take Semer Rechelim, you take sheep's wool, and you blend them together. So once we already verbalized that what type of tzemer is asur, only tzemer rechelim. I know that the rachel is a female sheep. It doesn't only mean female. It can be a male, it can be a young keves, it can be an ayol, but it means from the category of sheep. What happens if you have right now fibers that are a blend, right? It's not your McAllen, it's a Shivas Regal, it's blended. So there's a Gavaldik din of Bittul Beroiv. That means that if I have in the majority camel's hair, I can take these fibers and put them with linen. Why? Because the minority becomes bottled completely to the majority, and halachically you don't have sheep's wool. That's what the Holy Mishnah says, that im roiv and hagemalim, mutter to combine these fibers with linen and for you to wear a garment. But if this blend has in it, before you mix the linen, the majority of sheep's wool, true, there's camel's wool. Now the minority becomes completely bottled to the majority, and now it becomes asur. Now asks the Mishnah, what happens if it's half and half? Mechz al mechz, it's asur. With all of the ways of approaching it, if you're going to hold like the Rambam that Safek Doiraisa is only midrabanan l'chumra, then you can say the word asur is either midrabanan, or you can say that maybe this is not a normal doubt. In other words, people don't know what exactly is half and half. There's a real possibility over here. It's not a doubt. There are different types of sveikos, either Doiraisa or the Rabbanan. Mechz al mechz is asur. Let's go right. And now let's go to the other fiber type. Linen also has similar plants, which are not included in the Isur. One would be cannabis, canbus, hemp. So hemp is like linen, but it's not a problem. I can make a beged out of hemp and wool. So what happens if I have fibers, if I have threads that are a composite of cannabis, and pishton? Sheturafim zebozeh, same halacha, that if the majority is cannabis, then you can take that and mix it with wool. You have linen in it. The linen was already bottled. V'chulei. Now let's go weiter. Shiroyin is silk. Kolach, I don't know what kolach is. We'll call kolach kolach. Kolach is, I just want to say like this: silk could have been confused with linen, and I'm going to say a few extra words on this silk and linen possible confusion. Kolach is something similar to wool, similar to sheep's wool. So says the Mishnah that again, the Einoi Asur Elot Semeru Pishtin. Shirayan, you can make, even though silk looks like linen, you can make a beged made out of silk and wool. You can make a beged out of kolach and linen. You could. Because shirayan and kolach ain't bahen mishum kalayim. Aber, says the Holy Mishnah, avol asurin mishum marasa'ayin. Says the Beis Yosef that already in his days, silk wasn't so rare. When was there marasayin? When silk was a yakar hametzias. No one had silk. So therefore, the commoner never saw silk. When they looked at silk, they might have thought it's linen, marasayin. See, marasayin, the changes, we're saying. But nowadays, meaning already for a few hundred years, that people are familiar with silk and they know silk is silk. They know silk is not linen. There's no more marasayin. Today, halachically, many of the kapatas that you're wearing is made out of silk and wool. I take it back, the silk and wool. But people use silk. And they know it's not linen, so there's not even a marasayin issue. Let's go weiter with the Mishnah. Now, next stanza in the Mishnah. These are very important dinim. The Torah says, like we mentioned in the intro, either in Kedoshim, the words are, Aryan Pashas Kiseitse, the words are loy silba shatnes, and even in Kedoshim, where the Torah uses a broader term, it doesn't say thou shalt not get dressed in, it says thou shalt not put upon you loyale olecha. We'll see exactly what that means. But what about if you have kadim or kisasois, if you have mats, or if you have cushions, pillows, and they're made out of shatnes, but when you use them by sitting on them, you don't get dressed in them, and you don't even drape yourself in them. So says the Mishnah, ein behem mishum kalayim. However, that means you can sit on them, but providing that your skin will not touch it. So the Mara Fulda, which is more or less a middle letter Amid, adds a lot to this. He clarifies what the Mishnah means. First of all, Hakadim Aksos is Ein Behemishum Kalaim, says the Mara Fulda, Lefishim Asoyim L'Shchiva, they're made to be sat upon or to be laid upon. And he's quoting the pasuk. Forget about the fact that you're not garbing yourself in it. You're not even putting it on you. Because it says, Vayikra, you test, that's in Kedoshim, Loyalo Lechem, which Chazal learn, Aval Ato, yes, Matzia Tachtecha. But Vahani Mili, when does the Mishnah allow you to sit in it? Only Kishem Kashim, when they are hard, Videkonim, they're empty, that means that they're flat, they're not fluffy, and Unisunim Al Gabe Itzdeba. There is something separating you from it. In other words, he's making clear, guys, either you're wearing garments, right? The Mishnah is speaking, even when you're sleeping and you're not wearing a garment, your skin is not touching it, is because there is something separating that with you. Aval, but if they are soft, or if they're fluffy, malayim, or even if they are rakonim, but they are mamish in the bottom, says the Marafulda, listen to this, even if you have 10 mattresses, one on top of the other, so you are very far from it, but they're full, but they're fluffy, you're not allowed to lay all the way on the top. Because if you were to lay on it, anything that's thick, what happens when you sit on it? Its sides wrap around you a little bit. That wrapping around is called garbing.
Or is this saying you can wear kelaim as long as it doesn't touch your skin?
Wearing never. Draping never. Wearing would mean, Kevan, wearing a jacket, sticking your hands through the sleeves. Draping would mean you're not putting your hands through the sleeves, but you're putting your jacket over your shoulders. Never. If something is very flat and very hard, and it's under you, but not directly under you, and you're sitting on it, you're laying on it, that is when it's okay. Only then. Let's go weiter. We're going to have a lot. Now the Mishnah gives a bomb end line. For ein are lekaloim. There's no such a thing as, I'm only wearing it for a brief moment. Doesn't make a difference. Lo yilbash kalayim al gabe yasara. If you're wearing garments, Kevin, so if I'm wearing 10 jackets and only the outermost jacket is kalayim, can't do that. And even lignoif min hamechas, even if you're trying to steal tax. First of all, stealing tax is prohibited. When the Mishnah is speaking about stealing tax, we're speaking about a tax that you are allowed not to pay. And as Chazal tell us that throughout our Golus, there was very common to be a Jew tax. A Jew tax is something that I do not have to pay. In other words, any tax that's only directed towards the Jewish community, halachically, is a tax that I'm not chayav to pay. Any tax that's fair, I have to pay. So let's speak about a Jew tax. And what happened is, just as an example, we'll see in the Gemara that when you cross the bridge into the Jewish neighborhood, so for every garment that you had in your box, in your luggage, they would tax you. But for the garments that you were wearing, they wouldn't tax you. So the Mishnah is saying, one would think, if I have a shatnez garment in my luggage, and it's a type of tax that really, by Torah standard, it's not unethical to evade. Why not? Because it's only directed towards us. So a person would think, let me evade it by wearing it, because they only taxed what you had in your luggage. They didn't tax what you're wearing. Your person, and I'm only wearing, it's not just arai, I'm only wearing it to evade tax. You're not allowed to do that. No, it's shatnez may never, ever be worn or be draped upon you. Now let's see how far we can get. We have to move. So the Gemara opens up. It says in Pasha, Eino asur mishum kalayim. That's the opening line of the Mishnah. We quote a Braisa. And the Braisa is explaining, like I mentioned, the two psukim, both the one in Kiseitze and the one in Kedosh. And we begin with the one in Kiseitze. Iksiv says, Loi silba shatnei semenu pishnam yachto. Hayisi Oimer, since the Torah uses the expression, don't garb yourself, that would have limited the prohibition. Hayisi, I would have said, had the Torah only said that pasuk, Eine osad elam ililbosh. That's why the Torah says in Parshas Kedoshim, Lo yalo lecha. Lo yalo lecha means even if it's placed on your body and not worn, if it's draped upon you. Now, why didn't the Torah only say that? Lo yalo lecha. If the Torah would have said that, then I would have made it too broad. What happens if I have a box and I have a garment of shatnez in the box, and I'm putting the box on a stick, and I'm putting the stick on my shoulder? One would have said it's usher because shatnez is on me. That's already not usher. If the Torah only would have said lo yalo lecha yisi oimer, that not even lo yafshel es hakupa la'achayda, don't even sling a box containing shatnez behind your back, because you have in the box shatnez. Nah, that's why we have a pasuk in Kiseitz lo silbash, that lo yala has to be similar to the lo silbash. The draping has to be similar to the garbing, meaning ma malbush. When you garb yourself in something, what's unique about garbing, wearing a beged? Davar shuhu mahana saguf. It's something that the body, it brings benefit to the body. Ein li elo. Okay. Ein li elo davar shuhu mahana saguf. So you only prohibit something that gives benefit to your body. Draping gives a lower level of benefit, but it gives benefit. You have something on your shoulders, but having something in a box slung over my shoulder, there's no hana at all. That's mutter. Now hold on. So the yala means draping. The kasha, the way we're learning is, why did Hashem say the words olecha? Right lo yala. Right lo yala. So it says the Gemara answers. Rabbi Nicha, look at these new names of Amiroim in Yerushalmi. Rabbi Nicha Bar Sava, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, in the name of Rabbi Ze'eram, tells you know what that means, olecha, that if you have a beged gadol, you have a large garment, and only some of it has kalayim, and even if you were to wear that garment, it's very large. That means it flows on the floor. Some of it schleps on the floor. The kalayim is only on the part that's on the floor. None of the mixture in this beged will go on you. If the Torah would not have written alecha, I would have thought that it's mutter. That what? But that little piece of kalayim, the couple of, in the hem, they put linen in the hem. It's such a large, long garment that it's dragging on the floor. That is munach ba'aretz. It's only umitzasei ein boy. So the Torah is telling you alecha that lo yichasa boy mitzat sheni. Don't even wear the other side. And let's go a little bit weiter. Now back to the Braisa. I would have thought that what is included in linen, pishtan shalyam. Pishtan shalyam is linen of the sea, which means there are certain reeds that grows by the sea that they are linen-like, and they have fibers inside. No, Talmud loimet semero pishtim. And semero pishtim, let's go in the one line on Daf Ayin Vav. that the Torah hekesh, the Torah juxtaposes. Mat semer she'ein loy shem levai, just like wool. What is included in the isur of wool? Only something that's called wool, not other wools like tzemed gemalim, like tzemed gefen. That's not included. Only tzemed, any type of fiber that in the holy tongue is not called pishtim, but it's called pishtim shel yam. That's called that it has a shem levai. You define that name. That's not included in the prohibition. Af kol davar she'en l'shem levai. Only that is prohibited. But tzemer shel yam, the fact that it's called in the holy tongue tzemer shel yam, that already means it's not the pishtim that's included in the prohibition. Einoi asur elo tzemer u pishtim. We'll stop over here. A lot more to be
Thank you.
continued.